Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian. This is number 29 of the CK3 Dev Diaries. Today we're going to be talking about decisions, and this will be a fairly short video, especially in comparison to all the other, Dev Diaries that we have done in the recent weeks. This one has a bit less meat, but is interestingly written. If you haven't seen this Dev Diary yourself, then you definitely should check out the Dev Diary in the description. The link will of course be right there. And essentially this Dev Diary is written in a very unorthodox way. It is written in the style, I would call it, of after action reports. After action reports, if you've never heard of them, is something that happened, ages ago. It started like 15-20 years ago, where people would play games and then take screenshots, post those screenshots on forums, and write a story with it. Now, in this case, the developer here is essentially telling the story of Kalevi of Karelia. This fella, 16 years old, looking bright, looking very enthusiastic about everything. And as you can see here, he is 60. He has found a wife. It's not just a shadow on his side anymore. He has gotten a better crown, a better mantle, and a bunch of scars here. Honestly, this is a really nice image just for the scars. Just look at this. How intricate these scars really are is really, really nice. I hope that this is somewhat random when it comes to how the stars are generated. Not that there are, existing scar patterns, but that aside, essentially it tells the story of this fella. Now, I will jump over most of the story. I won't actually read it out because I think that is counter to what I do in these Dev Diary videos. I don't really read the Dev Diaries out. I explain what I think about them and what might be something that would otherwise be missed. Now, in this case, we're looking essentially at, as I said, decisions and how they guide you through your life. In the case of dear Kalevi here, he essentially is Zumenusko, and he wants to strengthen the faith of his people against the Orthodox and Catholic people that are encroaching on his, liberties in the West and the South. And the way he does it is by taking a decision that is quite interesting. Let's just scroll to this. It's called Defenders of Ukko. Foreign forces are skirting our territories like a pack of hungry wolves. If the ways of old are to survive, I must win the respect of the clans. Together we will raise a glorious war hall in Perkele's honor. Essentially creating a sub-step towards reformation. So as you can see right here, at a Summonesco holy site, it will build a hall of heroes. There will also be Summonesco fervor increases by 25, which is very significant. And then we have right here, you gain Defend of the Faith. We don't exactly know what that means, but I assume it has to do with piety gain and probably with you having to defend people of your religion against other religions. You also gain the trait Holy Warrior if you take this decision, so that's the commander trait. And other people inside of your realm also gain the trait Holy Warrior, making it easier for you to go to war with people not of your religion. So this is essentially a step to strengthen your religion without having to reform it right away, meaning there is now an extra step in there, or many other different steps, hopefully, because the more steps there are between being unreformed and then reformed, I think the better. I think that is something that we can all agree on. Not the focus, of course, of the Dev Diary, but I think that is a huge focus for me personally, where, if I conquer the important places of my faith, I should already be rewarded to some certain degree, not necessarily as much as, of course, you get rewarded when you reform the religion. But with that being said, let's take a look at the first screenshot here. That is a decision interface. As you can see, decisions are now, kind of parted here between major decisions and normal decisions, and you can still, now this is not visible here, but it is visible right here. You can still make it so that you can set a reminder whenever you meet all of the requirements. As you can see, you need a bunch of requirements for this, Defenders of Ukko decision, but whenever you meet all the requirements, you will get a notification. So that is still there. There is now just this new differentiation between major decisions and the decisions. In CK2, we had the reminder, but we didn't have a natural distinction between major decisions and minor decisions. They were all just decisions, and I could set a reminder for every single one of them. In CK3, we already have a pretty clear distinction here. Now what we have is Found Holy Order, Consecrate Bloodline, Dynasty of Many Crowns. All of those are fairly generic, as well as of course Found a New Empire. Dynasty of Many Crowns is the one that I've been thinking about most, but I don't think we're actually going to see that explained before release. I don't think that's going to be a thing. My guess still is the Dynasty of Many Crowns means you can, for example, unify kingdom COAs, so a coat of arms that you have under your control. For example, Castile and Leon might become Castile-Leon if you use Dynasty of Many Crowns. And then down here we have specific ones. Become Chakravarti and take stewardship of the Sacred River, I assume the Indus. So this is in India. Quite interesting, I really like it. And you can see as well that in the minor decisions, it is quite easily to tell that any decision that you fulfill the requirements for shows you an image instead of showing you this red X, as in I can't do it yet. Everything that you can do is filled out with this beautiful, beautiful image. On the right side, we have the generic decisions, and then we have Unite Africa. Now, the one big decision, or rather the one big question that I have for all of you, dear viewers, as well, Would they really call it Africa? It's something that I'm fairly ignorant towards, but I know that Africa as a term stems from the Roman province of Africa, and of course that was an exonym, so that came from the north, that didn't come exactly from the people in Africa itself. It is a gigantic continent, and I assume that, and I have to assume, I think, that this decision is open to sub-Saharan African rulers, which makes it even weirder, because they are so far detached from the original Roman province, and then from those people that called the entire continent Africa. I think that this is sub-Saharan Africa, because seek aid of the spirits is something that we know will happen inside of sub-Saharan religions. Tell me what you think. I feel like Unite Africa might be a bit misplaced, but I will say I like the interface, I like the basic of it. Somebody mentioned in the thread, and I can only agree with it. Somebody mentioned, hey, wouldn't it be nice if I could set the reminder thingy already here instead of having, you know, to open the decision in this way. So with that being said, quite interesting, and we will talk about invite champions and claimants. Both of these have these. We will talk about that in a second. Then we have some generic decisions like, you know, commission epic, convert to local culture, go on a pilgrimage, which is now, by the way, open to all religions instead of just a few select ones. Go on a pilgrimage, seek aid of the spirits, host feast, call hunt, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of very, very interesting stuff going on here that I'm a big fan of, but of course nothing that is inherently new. Now, this essentially talks about a lot of things. For example, this dev diary mentions the Great Schism. More on that at the end of the dev diary. There is some interesting development developer posts in the thread that I want to talk about. They also mention host feast and flagellate. Flagellate is when you punish yourself for the sins by hitting your back over and over again. Now you can see, as I mentioned earlier, that Kalevi is out here to bring the Summonesco faith to new heights. He wants to create a world in which the Summonesco I can't pronounce it for the life of me. Suomen Usko, I think is how I pronounce it. But he wants that Finnish belief, that Norse belief, like Nordic East belief, I guess. He wants that belief to be strengthened again. And as you can see, his requirements are he needs to hold a holy site, he needs to have a high level of devotion, so devoted servant, which is level 3, and at least 3 of your vassals are powerful, so he needs to be fairly sizable to even get powerful vassals, of course. He needs to have those powerful vassals to have 60 opinion of him. As you can see, he starts as a high chief. This is the high chiefdom of Karelia. He holds 5 counties himself. He's a bit over the domain limit right there. He has 836 people to his name, and he's a pretty okay fella. He's a scholar, it seems, and he doesn't have a wife yet. Now, what he does is, he finds a companion, and he finds a companion in a hunt. As you can see, if you click on a hunt, this window opens, you see all of the requirements. So, for example, cost 33 bucks. You also need, you know, call hunt will be unavailable for 5 years, so there is a very heavy 5 years cooldown that is considerably more than what we had in CK2, of course, but it's still, I think, acceptable at the end of the day. It will also help you lose stress. They already stressed that essentially hunts are mostly used to lose stress, although, of course, you know, you can gain prestige or you can meet your future wife. Hunt, far from people. Away from the others, I come across a cottage housing one of the most beautiful people I've ever laid my eyes on. She invited me to stay and rest, and I was surprised by how much I had in common with a simple peasant. Do you have to return to the hunt already, my lord? I've never met one such as you before. So, this is Tuija, and he could either, you know, just have a one-night stand, so to speak, lose some stress. He could say, nope, I'm not doing anything with you. Or he could say, come to my court. And he says, come to my court, my dear new wife. And then his wife starts looking at him. In the lighting, it seems like she is a goblin, but as you can see right here, she is a very normal and very well-modeled face, honestly. But important is that he essentially invites her, and that is part of his life. So, as you can see here, this decision, this minor decision, has a lasting impact on his life, which it, by the way, could have already had in CK2, but in CK2, I mean, in Way of Life, hunts are insanely random. I can only hope that they are not that random, in particular because we can actually host hunts, whereas in CK2 Way of Life you need to, you know, pick the hunt focus and then you essentially just wait a whole lot. With that being said, essentially he goes on, he does that, and I just, there you go. He essentially goes on and does that, and then he also decides, hey, you know what, now that I have a wife, I need people to serve me, and he decides to invite champions. Now, this is so much better than in CK2, I mean, so much better. In CK2, you would always simply generate a new character. You can see it right here. I would go to Intrigue, I would say, hey, I need a noble, I need a holy man. They would immediately appear. They are new characters, they have no backstory, they just exist, and they are entirely new. In CK3, at least 3 able-bodied men with 12 or more prowess will arrive as guests at court within the coming months. This is amazing. You get characters that have a backstory, you get characters that already are established, and most importantly, the game doesn't spam itself with new characters. I really like that idea, although I'm not certain at the 10 years cooldown. That is huge. But I really like this, because you have to live with what you have. For example, not every count was able, historically speaking, to invite 1 million people and then take someone that is actually a good chancer to get a claim. No, you had to deal with the circumstances that you were dealt. And I think that is quite interesting, because in CK3 it will be so much more roleplay-like to actually get people to come to a court. We already know that there is a character finder, but we also know that actually inviting people to a court will be considerably harder. So this decision is so much better from a roleplay point of view than CK3's one. And now you can see he is still 16. He made a lot of money in between these two. So I don't know how that happened. I assume that for the purposes of the after action report, you know, some help was used. But honestly, who doesn't do that for the purpose of pure roleplay? Either way, what we have down here is essentially him growing stronger. He's now 50. He holds 8 titles, 3 of which are duchies. And with those 3 duchies, he is now in the position of being able to found a new kingdom, something that we already know in CK2 as well. This is essentially the custom kingdom decision. The requirements are also very similar. You hold 3 or more duchies, or your realm size is 30 or more, and then you also need to be independent, and your level of fame must be illustrious, and then here you see the attached cost. That is pretty cool. He creates a kingdom, and we can see it further below as well, that this kingdom has the same sigil as his main, you know, duchy right here before he creates it. That is excellent. I mean, that is really how it goes, how it always went, and hopefully how it always will go. And you can also see that he became a drunkard. He saw that in the very first image here as well, that his nose is a bit red. And I don't know when he became a drunkard, but you know, when you get scarred because you went on a pilgrimage, when things suck every now and again, then of course you will be slightly weakened in your disposition towards alcohol and alcoholism. Now you can see that he tried to unify the realm, and then with that unified realm, that's essentially the story of this dev diary, he made it so that he was respected. And as a respected ruler, you know, you gotta go on a pilgrimage. You can see that he focuses on theology as well, so this character is going through different stages of life. But you can see he goes on a pilgrimage, he searches a physician, because during the pilgrimage he took some damage where, you know, those scars come from. And while he does all of that, he's building up his reputation, and eventually, after he, you know, became a pilgrim, an alcoholic, got wounded, as you can see, after all of that, he is now able to do Defenders of Oku. And that is something that I actually really like. Decisions in CK2 somewhat already guide your story. They guide where you want to go, they guide what you can do, they guide, you know, your ability to react to the world. But, for example, if you were a Romover ruler, or a Summonesco ruler for that purpose, in CK2, you would simply get the 3 holy sites and then take a decision to reform your religion, which, you know, you find in the religion tab. But that is it. There is no in-between, there's no before, there's no after. It's just, you know, either you are reformed or you are not reformed. I really like the idea of, for example, and I hope that this exists for many other, you know, or rather in many other ways, for many other people, not just unreformed pagans, where you have a way of establishing yourself and in your story without immediately having to reform the entirety of a religion. So this is pretty cool. I really like Defenders of Oku. I think this is really nice, but of course, as a whole, this is a somewhat thin dev diary, so as much as I like that, let's not focus on it too much, because this is just one of the many steps of enhancing stories in CK3. Of course, this is better than CK2, but again, I mean, I can't really talk too much about it. It's pretty clear why it is good, I think, you know? You're building a hall of heroes defending your holy site, and that is really what you do before you, I mean, reform the entire faith. So this is a really good sub-step towards reforming the faith. And as you can see, King Kalevi of Karelia wrote his own story in that sense, became a very influential person, and of course, you know, became quite a bit bigger while he did it. Now, what is interesting is this. I really love seeing these two people here, or rather this one person, but I love seeing them in contrast. You know, we have this young, enthusiastic, this naive person that goes out of his way to try and achieve something for his religion, and then we have the aged, wise, and strong ruler that knows that there will always be adversities. I love these models. They are so good. Now, interestingly enough, beyond that, there's not too much here, I think, in terms of differences that we need to note. We can see some modifiers here, what exactly they mean. We, of course, don't know. I assume this is like stress relief, this is family related, and this is probably related to his health. But beyond that, we don't really know anything about the circumstances. I think this is quite nice. I really like how you can see the visual changes to such a huge degree. Although he's fallen in love with this piece of clothing, hasn't he? I mean, just look at that. But either way, I really like the idea of decisions in this game, and there was already this dev diary. Really, what I will point out is right here, And that is essentially this. On the topic of Mend the Schism, rulers are offered to convert to the faith of the Reformer, or rather the Mender, and all main branches of Christianity that were considered ecumenical are considered heresies from there on out. So, while before mending of the Schism, all those people that, you know, for example, were Orthodox or Catholic had slight differences, but agreed on a common ground, on being common Christians and not heretics, after mending the Schism, one of the faiths has actually pushed itself into the only central position. There is no ecumenism anymore, because there is only one true faith now, and Catholicism, for example, would be invalid if Orthodoxy is the only valid, you know, design of Christianity. This is interesting, because in my opinion, it makes it so that I could create an ecumenical faith, and I could then go with that ecumenical faith and actually make it the mended form of Christianity, if I am reading this correctly. I would love that. I think that is pretty cool. Beyond that, let me just reload this in case there's anything new here. Yeah, not too many responses to anything really that would be interesting, I think. A very short dev diary, I think a really nicely written one. You should check it out. We see a lot of decisions here, but the most important decision to myself, which is this one, Dynasty of Many Crowns, is not shown. Either way, I really like what they're doing here. Oh no, I actually have to point out something negative, I suppose. Do religion-specific festivals exist? Things like Ramadan, Easter, and so on. No, systems for such festivals are going to be on the game, are not going... What? No, no systems. My bad. No system for such festivals are going to be in the game on release, but it would be great if we could add it further down the line. I agree, it would be great, and I hope that it comes as soon as possible after, you know, the release of the game. The decisions are good. I mean, that's really as far as I can go. I really like the character models. I mean, this is such a cheeky one. Overall, however, a fairly thin dev diary, as they are sometimes, you know, not everything can be incredibly meaty like the religious ones. Now, I hope that you know, may have an opinion on what the most important decision in the game to me, at least on a personal level, does, that being, of course, Dynasty of Many Crowns. Let me know in the comments, but for the moment, I would like to thank the members of the channel that are making all of this possible, namely the Barons Aaron, Stefan, the Richest T, Snywolf, Thomas, Mitchell, MFE, Florian, Dan, the Murcielago, Jacob, Rex Romanorum, Falling Phoenix, Eterna, and Charlie. Then, of course, also the Counts, Shifty, Wombat, Kazan, and Lachlan, and last but not least, the absolutely beautiful Duke, Suspicious Duck, Nathan, Jack, Kenneth, Lexo, Goodfield, Eric, Aiden, and Kiriana. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel, and I will see you later, Alligator.